Hello. I think
Hello.
we're live now, right? Are we
think so.
live? I think we
Yep,
are.
we're live.
All right, cool. Because that intro I didn't know that was a thing. So, hi guys. We're here live and welcome to Beneath the Cowl. I'm Aaron from the Married Makers and I'm joined by these three very talented cosplayers and 3D printers. And tonight's episode is going to be about 3D printing. So why don't we have everyone introduce yourself? We'll start with the left. We'll start with Frank. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what platforms people can find you on, how long you've been cosplaying, stuff like that. And we'll get the ball rolling.
Hi. I'm Frank. I have been, cosplaying for a little over 3 years now, and I do a lot of 3D printing tutorials and cosplay tutorials on YouTube.
Very cool. Chris?
Hi, everyone. My name's Chris. I go by Cosplay Chris on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram, Chris Stanley Official, and been cosplaying since 2013 and got into 3D printing around 2016. And same as Frank, just with the channel, a lot of tutorials, 3D printing, and just general cosplay and stuff like that.
Very cool.
And I'm Boltbox. You guys can call me Robin. That's my real name. I don't even know if I've even said my real name on my YouTube channel, but I've been cosplaying since 2016, I want to say. And I got into 3D printing back in 2018 whenever I wanted to start printing more helmets back then. And it's just kind of like overtaken my life now. And I also make YouTube tutorials as well. I've actually been talking a lot more about kind of like mental health stuff. And I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and that kind of plays into a lot of the 3D printing, helping with that. So I talk about a wide variety of stuff over on YouTube, but mostly 3D printing and tutorials and stuff for cosplay.
That's awesome. That's great. I guess I'll do a little quick thing. I'm Aaron from the Married Makers, the lesser half of the Married Makers. My wife Wendy and I do cosplay. We try to do some tutorials. She's been cosplaying for over 20 years. I've been doing it for about 8 or so. So I guess I don't know what year it is. So 20, I don't know.
No one knows what year it is.
2015, I don't know, 2016. I started 3D printing in 2017. Ironically, not for cosplay. We both used to work, well, she still does. We work in 3D animation as animators. Oh. And we started 3D printing to make maquettes and models and stuff. And then we're like, oh yeah, let's just do it for 3D printing. And it kind of just went from there. Cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's nice to meet all you guys. So I guess we'll just the first question would be, we already know when you started printing. What was your first 3D printer? Who wants to go first? And like, what made you want to get it? Did you follow tutorials? Frank, you want to start?
It's right there. I just brought it back upstairs to start repairing it. So yeah, it was a Creality CR10S. I think at the time, 2019, it was like $500, but like it was something about the $499 was better than the 500, right? So it was like, oh, this is kind of obtainable. This is a video game console, and it started it all. Yikes! I mean, it printed basically this whole red suit behind me, and it was a workhorse. It ran for dang near 2 years straight. On top of all the other printers I had, it just always worked. And the day I was packing at my house to leave England, I had one more print on it, and it was going. And I was like, all right, after I was starting to tear down my printers to ship them and stuff and get them boxed up, I was like, this is the last print on this, and then I'll take this out of commission and box it up. As that print was finishing, it got a heating element and the bed died. The bed or the board died after 2 years of running like a champ in England. So I was just like, you served your purpose. It sat in the garage here for about a year, but I finally just bought a bunch of replacement parts, like direct drive, new board, to like give it an overhaul and upgrade, because I kind of want to keep it in the arsenal as like my first printer to still have it. I think it's kind of cool.
Put it in a glass case, on a pedestal. Like right? Like Iron Man had a heart kind of thing, like it suits you too, right? Like
just
like pretty cool.
Especially it'll be cool to have that as a comparison as printers, like putting like the new Bamboo P1P next to that thing. Like how far the technology's come in 3 years is disgusting. It's incredible.
That's the first gen of the CR10S.
I mean, yeah, the only difference between the 10 and the 10S was a dual Z screw, and I think they did some tweaking on the heater cartridges, but basically the same printer. So yeah, that's like an original CR10.
Nice. Cool. Chris, you want to go next, or?
So it wasn't my printer per se. I went thirds with two other mates. So we got the little Monster Delta 3D printer, and this thing is tall. Like it's a tall thing. And this was like back in 2016 when I started getting into it because of Batman v Superman and 3D printing cowls and stuff like that. So myself, two of my mates went thirds in the little monster, and it resided at my mate Miles's place, who got me into 3D printing because he had the space. He had Perugers as well. He had a whole bunch of Perugers. It was like a production line. And then we started printing armor, which is great because you can print like gauntlets in one hit because of how tall it was. Obviously we started out with PLA. I got to a point and I said to Miles, I'm like, dude, I'm getting RSI from sanding. Can we please switch to ABS? And he's like, yeah, but it's a lot harder. I'm like,
ABS.
Come on, ABS, man.
Yeah.
And then over the years, getting more into resin printing. Like resin printing was still touch and go back then. Like the resin back then was a lot more tenacious and wouldn't agree with silicon if you were to mold.
Yeah.
Now
I learned that the hard way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So much wasted silicon. So now I've got myself Elegoo Satin, which has been great, and also throwing myself into learning resin printing because it's such a different kettle of fish from filament printing in terms of prepping your file, the support, and so much wasted resin. You come out the next morning and it's just a cured pool in a pool of resin, and I'm like,
that's so expensive.
I feel like I waste more resin cleaning the printer than I do in anything else, because everything's going great.
The vat and it just goes everywhere, and I'm like,
I'm still looking for somebody needs to make a good way to do that. Just a good like
a lid that goes on top and is like a spout that you could pour or something.
Yes.
Have you ever had it like you're pouring the resin and it's such a thin stream that the static electricity makes it go like?
I've had that.
And I'm like, what the hell?
The side.
Yeah. It's like, did I just enter the stratosphere, like the space or something? Because it's pouring and then it goes, and it pours like 90 degrees, and it just goes everywhere, and you're like, what?
Yeah, man.
So
that's basically my intro to it. But now it's resin prints at the moment. I do outsource a lot to like FacFox in China for like big stuff, like big stuff that needs one piece, like, and texture as well, like detail. And it's reasonably cheap as well. But like little stuff, like bits of armor and stuff like that, then that's resin or the filament with Miles, who has other printers as well, like Perugers and stuff like that.
That's cool. Well, actually, I have some points about that resin and the curing of like for silicone and stuff like that, but we'll touch on that after. Robin, I'd love to hear what your first printer is, how you got into that.
So my first 3D printer was a Creality CR10. Back in 2018, and I'm almost positive it was definitely, I definitely watched one of your videos, Frank, about the Crealities. So you got me down that hole.
It's your fault.
Sorry.
It's okay. But it ran for a good. It's still in my garage. I've been actually using it for parts for my newer. I have two CR10Ss now that I use, and I've just been like kind of parting it out. But I think the heated bed on it went out or something. But it held on there for a good 3 years or so. So it was definitely a workhorse of a machine, and that printed all of my. Like, I think my Zori Bliss helmet on, like, pretty much everything other than the Mando and the Bo-Katan armors that I did, I think was printed on that machine. So that definitely got me into this ridiculous hobby. But you guys were talking about resin 3D printing, and all of you talking about messing with the resin and everything. That's why I do not mess with resin printers.
You'll come around. You'll come around one day.
See, my husband
join us.
Yeah, my husband has an Elegoo. It's Mars. It's like the most recent one. But
Mars 3?
All I know is to get it. All I know how to do is to get stuff off of the bed. That's it. Because I don't want to screw with it. I don't want to. I will make.
That's the easy part. That's the easiest part of the resin.
And satisfying.
That's all that I do.
Yeah.
But it's too intimidating. It's too messy for me, at least right now. I'm sure I'll come around, but right now I'm just a FDM, Creality all the way kind of thing. But
I'm sure
I'll get there.
For everything that all four of us do, like armor builds and big pieces, you don't need resin unless you're doing like high detail scales or like small fine bits, right?
Yeah.
like Chris, what you said, you send out for high detail, right? So like unless you need like maybe like a Black Panther helmet, resin would be perfect. But if I was doing that, I would do FDM, and I would only put resin for the panels where the textures are and the smooth parts. I would FDM it. ABS, I will die on that hill. ABS all the way.
Man.
I was like you guys. I started with PLA. My first was actually Ultimaker 2+ Extended. So when I went in hard because it was just pricey. And I was like, well, there goes our combined income for a month and then some or something. Because I was back in 2017 and PLA for so long. And then I started working at Henchman Studios and they started using ABS. And my God, acetone welding, acetone smoothing.
I do want to do that.
Sanding is so easy. Like I so badly just want to test print like just a pauldron or something round in PLA and ABS and just do a side-by-side time comparison for sanding. And it's night and day. And after you try ABS for the first time, because it is tricky to get tuned in, you'll be like, why was I wasting my life before this? No, it is a pain in the ass, but it's actually, there's a lot of benefits I found, but sometimes I do want to go back to PLA because I saw some of your tutorials, Frank, and one of your older ones, Robin, about using resin to smooth. And I saw your recent one of how you got off of resin and went back to filler.
Resin.
Now I'm using
filler primer.
Color auto body filler or something.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've
resin smoothing's cool, but like it's so bad for you. Like,
it is. That's why I stopped doing it. It's just
that's the one thing.
If you get a little drop of that resin on you, you get that contact dermatitis.
I have burns. I have burns from. I'll have some on my skin just from walking out, from cleaning the vat, or some light comes through. Like it's like I think it's a big problem in the hobby with. Yeah, you're talking about ABS, right? But there's the caveat of the toxic fumes and the extra things you need to do with it. Everybody's trying to find such a quick way to get smooth prints at the cost of their health, right? It's like, well, start spraying acetone out of an airbrush or something, or resin smoothing, and they're not taking precautions.
I'm full on like hazmat.
Let's not even talk about putting resin through an airbrush.
Full on like
that was amazing. That was amazing. Yeah, like so people, it's all of this. You're risking your health just to not put in the work. And I don't know if you guys follow K Cosplay on Instagram. He's doing a Barracuda armor, and he's doing the whole thing in ABS, and he's acetone vapor smoothing it. It's incredible, but it's a very purpose-built Voron that he has. Pretty sure it's a Voron. So to get to that point to be able to do that was a lot of work. So there's definitely barriers here and there, and everybody wants a smoother print, but like just sand a little.
I'm one of those people. I have unabashedly said on my channel, I like sanding. I mean, there comes a point where I'm like, I don't want to do it anymore, but it's my me time. I put on a podcast or I put on an audiobook.
It's not that bad.
Yeah, it's really not. After a while, you need to get used to it.
It's funny because sanding, I find, is you either loathe it entirely. I find mostly woodworkers I watch on like YouTube and stuff, they hate sanding.
They hate it. Yeah.
Like cosplayers, like that's my zen time, right? Like exact same as what you say, Robin. I put on audiobooks. I will spend hours just sand. And it's and
there's tricks you pick up, right? There's it's not just chugging away with sandpaper. You find different grits, you find different fillers and primers and all of this. You find power tools. Like there are ways to cut corners and save time, but like everything's a tool, you know.
I did try the was it XTC from Smooth On? Years and years ago. It was sent to me like a mate who imports Smooth On stuff here in Australia, and it's so ridiculously expensive. Smooth On stuff.
It's ridiculously expensive in America too.
Yeah,
same in Canada.
I can imagine, and then to import it here, it's ridiculous. And we had a sampler kit at XTC, and I tried it on. It was actually. So this is a scaled down version of Nightmare on Elm Street 2 bust, but it was a life-size one that I was cleaning up before molding. And it was great, but so much of the burn detail got lost with the XTC. I feel like it's good for helmets, smooth stuff, nothing that has sharp details like that. But like I do enjoy sanding, that there are times where I'm like, I look at certain details where you have to get a file kit and I'm like,
Yep.
oh man, this is gonna be rough. But like you have to
Yeah.
do it. Like there's no other way
Exactly.
around it.
I will say though, for acetone smoothing, kind of to Frank's point, how you should just put the time in. If there are details, you do lose a lot with acetone as well.
Yep. There's no
but-
perfect, right? There's no perfect way to do any of it.
Yep.
There
yeah,
just
exactly. But if it's something like quick and dirty, like I just did a paint test for this build I'm working on now, and I just shrunk down the version of the helmet I'm doing, and I was paint testing different purples, and I just literally just dipped them in acetone for like 30 seconds, swirled it around so it's nice and glassy smooth, because I don't need the details. It doesn't need to look pretty. It just has to be smooth for the paint tests. And I just made like 4 or 5 of those, and it took me an hour. Obviously, full PPE. Like years ago, I got acetone in my eye.
Oh,
Luckily, I wear
I've been-
contact lenses. So now I have full face protection. I change my mask vents out like every few months. I wear full-on gloves, like nitrile gloves, sweaters. Like I'm like hazmat. I can go to Chernobyl in my outfit. And that's what every time I'm sanding out, I'm just like, because I don't want to.
Dude, I've had
Mhm.
filler primer, fresh filler primer go in my eye, and like the panic, it was instant fight or flight, and I'm like, that's it, my eye's gone. Like it's just gonna eat away. And I ran to the bathroom. I was working in an effects shop here in Sydney for a couple of weeks, and yeah, it was like the tin filler primer that we'd put in the spray gun, and I must have cracked. I think I cracked the lid open, and it's straight in my eye. And I ran to the bathroom, and this is how amazing the eye is. It's already got it in the corner, and my eye's essentially like, go away. Get out.
yeah. That's
So,
it's scary, right?
Someone was asking, can we see the chat? I can see the chat because people are asking questions.
Yeah, I can't see the chat either. Oh,
If
One
you
of the
click chat on the right-hand side.
Yeah, there
What
it
are your
is.
thoughts on
Oh,
printing
hey.
masks, helmets, cowls with TPU? TPU is tricky. TPU is
I'm
tricky.
scared of it.
I've
I
never
tried.
used it, so I don't know.
Flexible
Go for it, man.
PLAs.
Go for it. Don't know how to work
Yeah.
out, but
Yeah.
Do you use like, is Ninja Flex your go-to, or is there a certain brand you particularly like with TPU, or is it
Me?
anyone? Yeah.
Oh, I don't use it. Yeah.
Yeah. I tried it once. I'm like, nah.
We've tried Ninja Flex before, but that was like, I think they sent us like a spare reel of Ninja Flex. Is like here we threw this in the box of ABS and we tried it out. It was cool, but to dial it in was
It's hard.
no way.
It's
It's
very hard.
man. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then smoothing it is a nightmare too. And then painting it's also a nightmare. So it has certain applications, but if you're really going to be making cowls and stuff, that's resin. That's molds and pores. You'll get the best,
Molding and
print
casting
something
is the
really
best way.
for a nice cowl. And then you have a master mold. You can just keep doing it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, probably do it in like some sort of flexible resin that, like you said, it's easier to you can add color to it when you pull it, or you can cast it in any, like you have the variety as opposed to just trying to tune it in with one print with TPU.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's get on to tricks for resin printing. Let's get into more details to that if you guys want to. Like I know,
Don't.
Robin, you said you're scared.
Don't.
I was like, don't. No, I'm just kidding.
Just don't do it. Just don't
Right,
do
well,
it.
Chris, you said you have the Saturn. So I recently got the Jupiter from the Kickstarter.
Mm.
That is a behemoth to clean.
Yes, it
and
is.
I should have just gotten the Saturn. I don't know why we got the Jupiter. It's so big. Might as well should have just gotten 2 Saturns. But how do you feel about your Saturn? Like, what are your stages? Do you have a washing station? Like, what are your steps?
So I do have the wash cure station, and like for transparency, Elegoo reached out to me and they're like, hey, do you want to do a review on it? And I'm like, I don't know how to resin print. So I like had to do a crash course and teach myself with Chitu box and stuff like that. So they sent it and they sent the curing station. It's a beautiful kit. And, obviously documented the whole unboxing process. And by that time I had read up on Chitu box. I downloaded it, looked at people who were people's YouTube videos who had set up the Elegoo as well. So I had a basic idea, but it's nerve-wracking, man. And part of that video was printing a Robert Pattinson scaled down Batman cowl in one hit, trying to angle the file with the support material to make sure that there's going to be no suction, stuff like that, that'll pull the print back down into the vat. There's little things like that. It's crazy. You think Chitu box will just automatically be like, yep, this is the best way. But most times out of 10, no, you got to re-angle it, add more support. even when I was printing, here we go, my Eddie Munson belt buckle, the handcuff belt buckle, and I had to end up getting my mate to filament print it. So it's the tiniest design, and I had it angled on the print bed like that, and each time it just failed. And I had so much support, stuff like that. So it's a massive learning curve, but cleaning it is like, I get anxiety when I have to clean it. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah.
And it just, no matter how hard you clean it and how much you clean it, it still doesn't look clean when the vat's empty. And I'm like, everything's fogged, and then
it's slimy or sticky
off the plate underneath. And I'm like, it's sometimes the resin's leaked in under the tape, and I'm like, I want this thing looking pristine, but it's not going to happen. It's going to get dirtier and dirtier,
and you always scratch it.
Yeah. My dad is fascinated by it. Like, there'll be times, because my workshop's at mum and dad's. I live in an apartment with my fiance, so we can't do the big dirty prints here or sanding stuff here because we rent. So I go to mum and dad's and do all that, and obviously I've got to leave things to print there during the day or overnight. And Dad's fascinated by it. Like, he'll just send me photos on his phone and be like, 20 minutes to go, mate. It's looking good. Because he'll quickly take the top off.
Though.
But there are times I'll get a message in the morning and he's like, I don't see anything. I think it's failed, mate. It's just a big pile of goop. And I'm like, damn.
Yeah, it's always in the 11th hour too, right?
Yeah, resin printing's like, you want it to fail. You can save FDM prints near the end if they fail, right? There's ways to do that. But a resin print, I want that to fail immediately. Like, first layer stuck, done. Okay, I'd rather come into an empty plate than like a mangled half mess of just
stuck to your screen and stuck to
just give me that first layer. That first layer didn't adhere.
Sucks, guys, we're not convincing Robin very well. She doesn't seem to want to do it anymore. She just wants to do it even less.
I'm a messy person in general.
It's so it's not great.
I don't know. There's something about it.
I will say some advice. If you are just starting and you're hesitant, get water-based resin. I switched over to that, and it's so much easier not having to worry about, like, because you can't pour the chemicals if you're rinsing stuff off. Or rinsing off the vat down your sink. You have to dispose of it properly. I don't know what the rules are in the States, but here in Canada, we have to dispose of it in certain containers and take it to like a dump site or a safe site. The water washable stuff, you can actually filter it, and then that can be taken away with the trash collection. But also, it's just cleaner. Obviously, you shouldn't you should still have your PPE and everything like that, and your gloves. But you don't have to worry about isopropyl alcohol. Because you need, like, I use 99%, and that's expensive here. I don't know about if it's more.
It gets pricey. It gets
kind
of pricey.
So how much it was.
Because I know, like, the Canadian and the Australian dollar is pretty much on par most of the time. But
thank you, by the way. It's been great having it nearly on par compared to the USD.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it sucks for us because we're so close to the States, but that's okay. We still love you guys. But yeah, I would really recommend the water washable as a nice transition. And if you have problems with molding and casting, get clear resin. And then you just cure the crap out of it till it turns yellow. Because if as long as it's not something long and thin that will warp, if it's just like a big chunk or a block, like I recently made trophies for the Fan Expo cosplay contest last year, and
nice.
I was making certain like pucks and certain plates and stuff, and I just kept getting problems making my mold with platinum silicone. So I switched over to clear water-based resin, and I just cured the crap out of it till it turned yellow, and I soaked it in ISO, even though it is water-based, and didn't have a problem after that.
Nice.
Because for some reason, even if you cure it and if it's like an opaque color, the fumes, it can off gas even days after it's cured with UVs. So I highly recommend doing that, or just avoid it altogether because it's a pain in the ass.
You see, what's crazy is resin. I mean, resin printing's cool, and there are benefits to it, but like, but this is a print off of the P1P. So FDM's catching up. So once I chromed them, one of these is resin and one isn't. And honestly, unless I get real close to the camera, I couldn't tell. The 99% person who's going to see this on a chest is going to be like, oh wow, look, like So FDM printing's catching up
Yeah.
to
I agree.
being able to catch up to this type of stuff, where resin printing, I think that's going to start to fall back to the miniatures and the models, the figures, the things that an FDM printer just cannot do.
Right.
So you wouldn't be remiss to have just good FDM printer, but it's pros and cons of both. I get people who are coming over to FDM messaging me. They grew up in resin and they're having trouble with, Cura or the slicers because their mind isn't adjusted to that yet. Where one of my big problems with resin printing, my first resin printer was the Epax X156, a massive mini fridge of a printer. And what you don't think about is suction. Because I started to print domes, and as they were coming off the build, it starts to make a vacuum, and you just don't
So you
think
gotta put a
about
hole in the top. So
I kept having weird failures, and I'm like, why is it and you want to save material in FDM printing? You're blocking supports. You're like, how much material can I save?
Right.
And the second you start trying to do that with resin printing, you're going to have failures. You can't cut corners with those supports because you'll have islands that try to print, and then it clogs up the screen, and it's just such a different world. But they both have such amazing pros and cons.
Right.
I wouldn't resin print an Iron Man suit, but you have little arc reactors that work out great for it. Or it's such a cool. I love teaching people about resin printing. I think the technology is so much cooler, but man, is it boring to watch? You're just it's not cool to watch, but it's so much cooler. Yeah, that's all you're doing. You're watching paint cure with a UV light, but but it's such a cooler technology, especially with mask MSLA and all that. It's so cool that it can do that, but it's just boring to look at.
It seems like it should be the future, right?
Yeah,
it should be the future because it looks, like you said, that's like something out of
Delta printers, though.
Yeah.
My Super Racer, the Delta style, they're the coolest printer to watch. Watching it just whip around and stuff. But resin. I'm bad at resin printing.
I think the thing that blew my mind whenever my husband set up his resin printer was the fact that he prints a lot of miniatures and stuff for D&D and Warhammer. And whenever he told me that he could either print one miniature on it, or he could print however many fit on a plate.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
The same amount of time. I was like, wait a minute, what?
But then when you understand how it works, you're like, oh.
Yeah. I was like, that's amazing.
It's still going to put out the same amount of light each layer. So the shorter you can make it, it doesn't matter. One or 1,000.
The only thing you have to worry about in that situation is making sure you don't run out of resin.
Yes.
Raise your hand if you've done that, right? You're like, you forgot to fill the tank again. Or
the big printers, you need a whole, my X156, I need a whole bottle just to keep the vat full, plus what I'm going to print. It gets expensive.
I was going to say, you probably can't fill while it's printing. If you
notice
that it's...
You can
you
just open it really quick and you just throw it in. As long as it's not indirect sunlight, you're not a...
You'll be
And you don't... It's always better to pour it slowly onto the build plate so it drips down, because you don't want to make a wave. The last thing you want to do is make turbulence. So you just pour it real slowly over the build plate. And it also helps with ambient temperature as it starts to go through the air. If you have a cold bottle of resin, you don't want to just pour that into a warm vat. Some people even heat their bottles. If you have a heated vat chamber or a heated build volume, you can just keep a spare bottle in there with it, so it's always at temperature. There's weird little tricks you start to pick up that you never have to do with plastic printing.
Yeah. So I got a question. This might be a little controversial, but slicer of choice. Who wants to go first?
I'll just say I use Cura only because it's what I know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's what I know, and I don't know. People tell me to. I think it's Prusa slicer. Everyone's always telling me to do that, and I'm like, I don't have time to learn another slicer. I'm just.
That's what it falls down to, right? It's if it's not broke, we're not. I don't think any of us are 3D printer people, and what I mean by that is they're tools for us to make things. There are the channels and the people who chase the perfect print, right? They're they want the fastest, best printer. It's but it works. I hit print and I got thing. Why do I need to change how I got
my needs? So
exactly. So
that's fair.
If you look at Bamboo Studio, it's awesome, but man, the user interface on it's garbage. It's so confusing. I couldn't imagine that being my first slicer. I wouldn't know what to do. It's not user friendly, but I know what all this stuff means. So it's okay, angles. They need to fix that, because if they're going to be taking over the market the way they are, they need it to be more approachable. Or
that's very true. Chris, what about you?
So all honesty, I've always had Miles or Ben slice stuff for me for filament printing. Again, because I need to put time aside, sit down and learn it. But then going back to resin printing, I had to force myself to learn Chitubox with prepping the resin print file. So I do know prepping resin prints, but in terms of filament, no. I always will send Benny or Milo the file and they just whip it back and it's all ready to go. And then just put it on a USB. So again,
so we need a Miles or Benny. That's what we need.
Yeah,
we need someone. We don't need a slicer
in a 3D printing array.
Yeah,
that'd be amazing.
Yeah. So and look, I there are times where I've been at Miles' place and I'm just like watching him like behind his back and I'm like, what did you just press? And he's explaining it to me and I'm like, and it's like Homer's brain. It's like a donkey half asleep with light buzzing around it. I'm like, oh man, I really should just sit down and dedicate time to this because his printer of choice was Perugia for so many years. Like he Miles has so like doing this type of stuff is his hobby, but his main jam is 3D printing. You guys know like reverse brackets, reverse cameras on cars and sensors and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
So he 3D prints the brackets for SUVs and pickup trucks that house the sensors and the cameras. So you buy the kit. Anyway, he's made an absolute mozza. He's literally just signed a lease for a brand new warehouse space. Like,
wow.
It's such a niche. It's such a niche thing. No one else is doing it. So it's for people that have bought pickup trucks, SUVs that don't have them but want the kit for the camera and the sensors. So he makes a bunch of different brackets for different cameras and stuff like that. So I think at one point he had 15 Perugias all just smashing out. And I was doing work for him at one point. You know, you get the tray, crack off all the brackets, prep them, we'd spray them with like a textured bumper coating to give them a nice coating to get rid of the print lines.
Nice.
So like he's all over it. Like he can cut a file, prep a file like that. So it is like hypnotic to watch him. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going on.
I don't know what happened.
I just actually used it's called Velar Slicer, and it's what Piopoli uses because I got the Piopoli Forge, and so it was the first different resin printing slicer I used aside from Chitubox Lite, and that actually the auto support placement on that worked way better because like you were saying before, you think the program is like, yeah, this is where you need all your supports. Chitubox doesn't do that. The paid version might. I don't know. I'm not paying for that. But Velar Slicer, it worked. Yeah, it worked. It worked really good for testing some stuff out. I think I did an Eye of Agamotto, and I arranged it how I wanted to preserve some detail. Hit auto arrange on the supports, and just kind of sent it, and it survived. So I was like, all right, nice. Better. I
will say the paid version of Chitubox. Nah, I got like a free year membership when I got my Kickstarter for the Jupiter. After about an hour of futzing with it, I went back to the original because I had like a Mars 3, and then so I've been using it for years. But yeah, it's the paid version for some reason is worse. I don't know why. Like,
so
weird. So for the record, I used to use Cura when I first got my Ultimaker years ago, but then over the years I switched to Simplify. And
that's another one, yeah.
But I do not agree with the new version and like their lack of communication. But they were so ahead 4 years ago. I think they were ahead of the curve with like the supports and all that stuff. But then every other slicer program caught up and then some in the last few years. And then the new version they just released for a stupid amount of money, 200 American. And so that's like 260 for us, I think, in Canada. So that's a ludicrous amount of money. And it's not that much better. It's not worth it in my opinion. So I'm sticking with just my old license of Simplify. I find it super easy, super intuitive, only because it's more like I'm used to, like, I worked over a decade in 3D animation. So the 3D programs I'm used to, it's very, very similar and intuitive in that way. So it would just seem more natural for me. I will say Cura, though, off the bat, it's so easy to learn. It's so good. And it's intuitive for the supports, like instead of like the opposite of Chitubox, right? So it's really good for that. It's really intuitive. It's super streamlined, and
it'll give you more than you need. It'll give you more than you need, and then you can start cutting it away. I mean, I don't really need this. I don't really need that. But it'll get the print to print.
So I want to go back to Cura, and I tried futzing around with it for a bit every once in a while, but then I'm like, I need to get this printed. I got to just quickly switch back to Simplify. So I do want to get back.
If it works, it works, man. I mean, that's it.
That's cool. Okay.
Some people get so hung up on that and just trying to find the best. It works.
Yeah, I was going to say, it makes me feel better to hear you guys say that, because I've had so many people comment or ask me, like, basically being like, why aren't you using this slicer? And I don't have time to learn it.
You know how many people yell at me for using rafts on my prints? Why are you using rafts?
I use
Why are you using rafts? That just means your bed's not level. No, it means I don't have to level my bed as much.
Yes.
Yeah.
The bigger your printer is, the more you have to level it, and the more pain in the ass it is to level. So
I like my supports having good structure and being connected. When you use a raft, now you're guaranteeing your supports have a better base.
Yep.
And you're wasting material. I'm really not. I'm really not.
And especially if you mess up a print, if a print fails because you don't have the raft, you're wasting more material that way. So in the long run, also with ABS, you have a problem with lifting off the bed. Having a raft,
warping in general.
You get elephant foot. Yeah, you warp. Yep. So using a raft is so much easier. It saves a lot.
If you want, it's always guaranteed when somebody posts a picture on like the 3D printing Facebook group with, they'll be doing a big print, like, oh, here goes my first Mandalorian helmet. It's going to be a 3 or 4 day print. Guaranteed that most of the comments will be, why is it taking that? Mine only took this long. Everybody starts hitting with their, how long. It's like, okay, but his print finished. It's printing. Like he's, oh my God. Every freaking time. You can guarantee. Well, yours took 2 days. Mine took 47 hours.
It's like a part of my euphemism, but it's a dick measuring contest.
I was just going to say
it is. It's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is.
I printed a bigger dick than you.
Quicker too. Quicker. Oh God. I'm glad we all see this too. That just makes it so much better.
I'm like, sometimes I just have to take a step back, and I'm like, it's not that deep. It's just,
I've gotten comments like, why did you put supports there? You could just bridge it. I'm like, because I don't want to play around with my bridge settings. Like I do bridge stuff and everything, but sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to deal with it. Put in some supports. I could just throw them in there.
That's it.
It adds an extra 30 minutes to my print time, an hour maybe. But I have peace of mind.
And the more printers you have, the less you really care how long it's going to take. You really,
exactly.
You don't care. It's like, let this go for 3 days, whatever. I'll be back. It helps.
Exactly. So, what about in terms of, do you guys do a lot of your own 3D modeling? Do you I know, like a lot of you buy from I know Do 3D and stuff like that, and no judgment here. Do you prefer that? Like, would you like to learn it? Is there a program you use? Have you tried playing around with it? Anybody want to start?
I haven't, obviously. There are builds where Do 3D. I've had him do stuff from scratch for me, like my Phantom Cowl. Again, it's you reach out to the people that know how to do it. Like if I tried to do it, I'd still be 3D sculpting it to this day and just getting nowhere with it. So it's definitely something I'd like to look into. But again, it's setting the time aside to do it. So I rely on the people who are skilled at it and can do a better job than I could ever do. So yeah.
Hey, that's And you're supporting other artists. You're supporting other, 100%. That's what you got to do, right?
Yep.
Yeah, for the most part, I purchase a lot of my 3D models, but I have done a little bit of 3D modeling. It's like nothing sellable worthy or whatever. I did most of it in Fusion 360. I've modeled Bo-Katan's, like her Westar rifles from Clone Wars, because they're really blocky and they were really easy to kind of.
Oh, I saw that. That's really cool.
They're really easy to kind of learn on. And I am planning on trying to model Aloy's armor, because she has like 3 pieces of armor on her original outfit. It's organic looking enough that I'm like, I could probably get away with this. So it's something that I would like to learn. It's just like you said, it's making the time to do it. There's so many different ways to do it. Like there's just, I've seen people use like the sculpting, people do sculpting tools, but for my brain, Fusion 3, ZBrush, that's it. And Fusion 360 for some reason just works better with my brain. But it's just finding the time. It's and that's another thing that really pisses me off. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Whenever people get mad about if you're just 3D printing a model and you're not actually, making the model
Modeling it?
yourself.
Well, here,
Purist.
let me ask
Yeah.
the question, because this is a cosplay-ish based, right?
hmm
Does it make your project or cosplay less valid if you bought the file and printed it? Does my
Yeah.
here, perfect example. That was a free file. I didn't even pay for this one. I
Mhm.
paid for this one, printed it. Does it invalidate or make my costume any less significant than somebody who sat there with foam or 3D modeled their own suit, Iron Man suit, and printed it?
No,
Not at all.
You're,
As
you're,
long
you're
as it looks
still,
good, right?
you're still putting in the work, the labor, and a lot of people don't take into account the labor. They just see it at face value, and they're like,
Oh, but the printer does all the work, man. I hit print and I get suit. Come on.
Oh,
yeah,
we've all heard that. Grinds
Yeah.
my gears.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well,
I
you just
know.
hit print, right? Like, well, I'm sorry, what? I just hit
Yeah.
There are
print.
still cosplay competitions that don't allow 3D printing unless you can. They're more niche, smaller cons now. A lot of the bigger ones have finally started to cave, which is great. But in the States, because they don't want the flack from it. But there are still places that, unless you can prove that you modeled certain things or a certain amount of work went into it, that you can't use certain 3D printed parts, and that sucks. That's so stupid. Let's do
There's some
things the
international
hard way.
contests. Yeah, there's some international contests, like that one that is hosted in Japan, and it's escaping me right now.
I know what you're talking about,
Where
yeah.
people all over the world go to Japan for the finals, and it has to be like anime-based cosplay. One of them is you have to have created at least like 75, 80% or a certain percentage of it, and for 3D prints, you had to have modeled that. And to me, that doesn't, like, how is it any different if you just had a team working on the cosplay and you didn't personally model it, but someone on your team did? Like, someone is still doing it as long as you credit them, and you say, this is where I got it, whatever. I don't see the problem. Like, you wouldn't tell like a race car driver, like, well, you didn't win the race, the car did. All you did was hit the gas. Like, no, like
that's good. That's one of the ones I've heard, actually.
I just made it up. Yay. But
that's fair.
like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I will say, like, everything I do, I stubbornly model, but I spent a lot of time in college and I spent over a decade in the industry, but that's just my own personal preference. But you'll be surprised as to how many mainstream movies, box office movies, games, TV shows, commercials buy stuff from Turbo Squid and
Turbo Squid, oh my God,
and all that stuff. You'd be absolutely shocked, like, whoa, that you guys didn't do that, you didn't do that, you didn't, like, and which studios do it. And the rule is, and it applies for cosplay as well as film and television, if it looks right, it is right. And I mean, like I'll say, like, all your armor, like, for all three of you, they all look beautiful, but I guarantee you there's some pieces you look on the back of it and you're like, whoa.
Close.
It's like Frankenstein.
But
no one sees that, so it doesn't matter. It shouldn't invalidate
the 5-foot rule.
Yes.
The 5-foot rule.
Yeah. Exactly.
Looks good, folks. Yeah, that's it. It's in there. I don't know.
Oh, for
I had a possible gig a couple of weeks ago where friends of mine who set up premieres and stuff like that here in Sydney for screenings, and they got Cocaine Bear, because we've got that.
Oh, nice.
And they're like, hey, what do you think about 3D printing a bear head and having blood and all that? I'm like, yeah, I can do it. I'm like, how long we got? And they're like, 4 weeks. So this was a good couple of weeks ago. And I'm like, do you have a file, like, from the studio? And they're like, no, can you find one? I'm like, sure. Yeah. So I had a search and I found this awesome looking bear head that was growling, so I can get like silicon and have drool and the cocaine and the blood and all that stuff. And they're like, all right, we'll pitch it to the head honchos. And they came back and they're like, no, they want a taxidermied bear head. And I'm like, good luck finding that in Sydney or New South Wales, like the state I live in. And I'm like, I don't know if people would agree with that, but like, so like they didn't have a file. They just expected me to find one, which is fair. Like, I can't imagine they'd have a file on hand.
I just got approached. I have a sponsored video in March for a video game, a mobile game, and they wanted me to build this staff thing from the game. And I asked them, like, hey, can you get me some reference images or something? Mm-hmm. And all they were able to send me was a video of it spinning in 360. That's it. That's it. That's the only asset they were able to give me. I'm like, but it's your game. You don't have concept art. You don't have the 3D file, the
turnarounds, everything.
Nothing,
Yeah.
like nothing I can give to my modeler to be like, I mean, this will work, but like, it's your guys' game. Like, you literally just released this game. You don't have any assets anywhere. Like, you can't kick an email out. Hey, this staff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm gonna have to increase the price now of this because now I'm gonna need to. The model is going to take even more time to do this, and so
I've got to say
right.
the opposite with that. When I've worked with Ubisoft a couple of times, the first big project I did with them was Alexios from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I said the same thing. I'm like, can I get some 3D turnarounds and maybe extract some parts of his gauntlets, like the snake, eagle, and all that, so I can resin print them and put them on the foam armor? And like, yeah, hang on, we just got to get you to sign this NDA, but then we'll send it all through. Anyway, they send it through, and obviously at the time I didn't have the software to read the files, so I sent them to Miles. He calls me and he goes, dude, you got to come over and see this shit. So I come over, brings it up. There's Alexios, all the armor and everything. He goes, watch this. Hits a button, takes his armor off. There's his clothes underneath. Hits another button. He's naked. Hits another button. He's skeleton. Hits another button. And his eyeballs are just left. And he's
the
like,
entire rig, huh?
That's
every time he goes, dude, we can 3D print his nervous system if we wanted to.
Wait, when you say the skeleton, do you mean the rig or do you mean like a modeled skeleton?
A model skeleton, like
a
skeleton.
Wow.
A skeleton.
Because I will say, like when I was a rigger for forever, and rigs are very tightly kept. Like there's a lot of programming and a lot of stuff that goes into that. And rigs, they usually do not just give out willy nilly. So if they gave you the skeleton and that kind of stuff, okay, but if they're going to give you the rig, that's like a lot of money right there.
Accommodating. They've always been great
that's
to
great.
work with. Like there are some projects where, like Nomad from Ghost Recon, it's more pre-existing tactical stuff you can buy, but they give you the list of what they modeled certain parts of his costume from. Like the backpack you can buy. He wears Oakley gloves. So I'm like, cool, that exists. But with Alexios, that was a lot of 3D printing and foam. So it was good. It was a good mixed media project, but learn a lot with that one.
Well, that's probably a reflection of Ubisoft's pipeline and data archives, right? Because they've been making games for so long. They've been making the Assassin's Creed games for so long. They probably have just blank models that they have the skeleton, the skin, the texture, and they're able to then, all right, we need to make them a little taller, darken the skin, do this, do that. So that was probably just, if it was like an indie game company, you probably would have been lucky to get like a texture file, this is unprintable, it's just the image of it. It's low polygon and just a painted texture, where something like Ubisoft, it's like, oh, here's everything.
Really. That's cool.
By the way, if you leak this, we will own your house. We will own your
right. Yeah. I was under that for the Horizon Forbidden West, the NDA I signed for that one.
Same.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So we have a comment here. It says they're asking what websites do you guys use for buying designs, and we mentioned DO3D. Are there any other sites you recommend? Like there's Thingiverse.
I was gonna say Thingiverse is usually the other one.
CG Trader. Yeah. CG Trader. It's the little cousin of Turbo Squid. Make sure you're looking at make sure you're actually buying an STL or 3D OBJ, because you can accidentally buy game files on CG Trader that are unprintable. Etsy has tons of 3D files on it.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
And there's a few like if you just look on Instagram, there's quite a few people that you can just commission to that are pretty good for that. And I actually have a good comment saying, are sewn costumes ever disqualified because the maker used a pattern?
I know,
same concept as using a pre-made 3D printed file.
Absolutely.
Right? A 3D file. Yeah. That's a very good point.
Again, it's like the whole, I find that I always tell people, I'm like, find a medium that you like to work with and just go with it. That's why I like cosplay, because I obviously do a lot of 3D printing, but whenever I get burnt out on 3D printing, as I am kind of now, I can do sewing. Like I'm doing a lot of sewing right now, and you can go to foam. You can like just bop around and use whatever you like. But that's what I always tell people. I'm like, I don't know, don't get your panties in a twist because I'm
I feel like the stigma is lifting with 3D printing right now.
It's getting there. It lowered the bar. It lowered the bar of entry, and that scares a lot of people. But at the same time, it raised a lot of gatekeeping. It lowered the bar of entry, but it also raised the ceiling on how good your stuff can be now.
Yes.
If you were to tell a kid to go, hey man, make a Black Panther helmet for me out of foam and cardboard, you might get it done eventually. It might look pretty good, but now I can FDM or resin print one that looks perfect and put more time into that costume now because I didn't spend a year trying to do all the dots that's amazing.
Right.
It's incredible.
And then you can elevate it even more. Like, you add your servos and you add lights and you add working bits and stuff like that. As a whole, for people in cosplay in general, like you said, it raises the bar and it just lets people push the envelope. And you might do, someone might do something like, that's a great idea. Maybe I can apply it to this.
You can it's like a Lego kit now. Like you print it out, put it together, throw electronics in it, and you just have an Iron Man helmet now.
And making it more accessible to people, even younger people. You get more people wanting to go into engineering, go into this, go into that. And like for me, 3D printing, like when I did cosplay before, I did foam work and stuff like that. And I was kind of iffy on it. I like I've worked on it now, but 3D printing helped me throw myself into cosplay. And then because of that, I got comfortable enough to go back and work on my foam work and stuff like that. The next thing and my molding and casting, the next thing I want to tackle is our sewing skills, because the one thing both of us are not very good at is our sewing skills.
I've sewn for like 5 years and I'm still not great at it. So I'm right there.
I feel like it's just like some magical art you're born with or not. I don't know. But
yeah, like you said, it's been making it more accessible for people. And just, again, like with my ADHD, it's like there will be times where I'm just like, I'm so excited about a costume project and someone just put out armor for it. And like, I guess a good example was Bo-Katan. Whenever Bo-Katan showed up in The Mandalorian 2 years ago, I like freaked out. I was like dying because I love her in the Clone Wars. And whenever I actually, the 3D modeler actually reached out to me and was like, hey, I have this, I just finished modeling the helmet. Do you want to give it a go? So he gave that to me for free and I printed it out and all that stuff. And then I asked him, I was like, are you going to be modeling this armor? Because I would love to just, throw that all onto my printer. So it made that costume, I don't want to say easier because that's not the right word, but it
more
made
accessible.
It made it more accessible and more.
Accessible.
I was like, I can do this. I can get all of this stuff printed out on my 3D printers now while I'm like super excited about it. And then I think it was, whenever it finally got like a little bit warmer here, I live in Pennsylvania. And then I started sanding. It's like you can kind of compartmentalize like when you're doing stuff. And you can even go further back to that. You can, if you're like one day you're really into like slicing files and stuff and getting them all ready to print, there's just there's so many different aspects to it that I don't know. It just made it a lot more accessible and
it leads to other stuff too, right? Like, like I never wanted to work with like lighting and servos, but after doing all these prints and stuff, I'm like, okay, well now I want to dip my toes into that and get more into that. And, and it's just good overall. So this actually might be a good time to ask, budget aside, time aside, what is your dream cosplay? And I'm going to say, Frank, you can't say Iron Man because you've done a billion Iron Man. I'm just joking, man. You can do whatever you want. You can say whatever you like.
I have one that's not Iron
dream
Man.
Cosplay. It doesn't have to be for a contest, just for you, something you've always wanted to do. Budget is not an issue. Materials, nothing is an issue. Why don't you start, Frank?
Wing Gundam Zero. Wing Gundam Zero from Gundam Wing Endless Waltz.
Oh, nice.
That's a good.
That would be cool.
I have good files for it. It's not something that should be 3D printed. I would love to do a good, legit Gundam cosplay. It's just those damn wings, man. Like, I wouldn't want them to be these little turkey chicken wings that are, I'd want them to be the actual full wings. And if you're doing a Gundam cosplay, you need to be in stilts because just the proportions of the head, waist, and legs. Maybe Tyra Banks could wear a Gundam costume and look fine in it. I don't know. Like you do. You need to be like a 6'5" supermodel. Like you do.
Yeah.
If you're watching Tyra,
I'll make you a suit, right? But I do have a Gundam cosplay on the horizon. Not Wing Zero. It's going to be Heavy Arms, the one with all the missile pods and 2 Gatling guns.
Oh my gosh.
Because I've never seen anybody do that costume where all the doors open. And guess what? Servos are a thing. So I have pretty big plans for that one. Maybe one day I'll figure out a way to do Wing Zero, but if I'm going to attack that one, that's my like ultimate dream cosplay.
Awesome. That's
day.
a good pick.
That's a heck of a yeah.
That's ambitious, but man, I hope you do it, and I cannot wait to see it. That's so cool.
Me too.
Okay, who wants to go next? Chris?
So my dream one is actually one I'm going to try and attempt this year. Hopefully.
Oh, what is it? Who is that?
That's Black Suit Superman with wings.
Oh.
What is that from?
So the muscle suit is here at the moment that I'm slowly putting together. I'm experimenting with urethane at the moment because his chest emblem is molten rock glowing. So I want to do a clay pour of the chest emblem and sculpt it like rock, cast it in a amber urethane and have an LED pad under there, paint the dry brush the rock on and still have the red glowing through. Figure out some sort of Frankie, you probably know, man, like an LED pad. This one right here, you want to get your hands on a NeoPixel matrix because I'm working on a code for this where it looks like it's nanotech that's breathing and moving. So if you did red light, you could get it to kind of glow and
like a pulse or something, or like a
fire.
Yeah.
So it would be mounted. It'd be mounted on the textured fabric with the muscle suit showing through because Henry wore like chrome muscles under his suit. And then wings. I've never built wings before, but I want to try wings, but like big,
expanding wings.
Yeah,
check out Willow Creative.
Willow Creative, yeah, exactly. Willow. That's what I was going to say.
Oh my god.
Willow.
So
she's the girl.
That's what I'm going to try and do this year. It's going to cost a lot, but I'm like, I don't care. Like, I always have these thoughts when I build a new cosplay. When I'm a grandpa and like I can show my grandkids and be like, look what your grandpa did, and they're like, oh, you're an idiot. But
look when I fit in this muscle suit. Look at it. Look.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. But cost, it's like the way I think about it is I don't go on vacation anymore. I don't go on trips with my wife. Our vacation are conventions and cosplay. All the money we would spend on that, we'll spend on our own stuff. And if it makes you happy, if it's your dream cosplay, it's your dream, then price isn't really an issue. Well, unless you can't feed yourself or something. But price isn't an issue because it's just so cool and it's your dream, right?
Yeah.
Robin, what's that?
Okay, so I feel like I cycled through like 5 different things while you guys were talking, but if I had to, I would love to make Legion from Mass Effect 2. I know it's such a random one, but I have a soft goal of wanting to cosplay as many of the companions as I can from Mass Effect 2. I've cosplayed Commander Shepard, Miranda. I started Tally, didn't finish it, and I also have a Liara that I don't feel like putting the prosthetic on. I have it. I have all of it. I just haven't done it and put it on. But there's something about Legion, like I just loved his, I don't know, I love AI techie characters and games, and I just really loved his arc in that story. But that would be, I consider that a dream one because I'm like, I probably will never make that costume, but it's one of those costumes where I've thought about how I would make it in my head. And it's just one of those, I don't know if I will ever.
That's half the fun though, right?
I know. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like sometimes I get like done like figuring out how I would do it. And I'm like, okay, I'm good. Like I don't need to make it.
So I was just because I wasn't too familiar with Legion from Mass Effect. I know of Legion, but you want to do like reverse legs and everything like that, like so
that's
stilts?
Like I would want it to look exactly like him,
Yeah.
And I was even like the reverse legs. I was even trying to figure out with Tally because I was starting to build Tally during the pandemic, ironically, because she's got the freaking mask on and they have weakened immune systems, but. She's got like weird legs too, and I was like trying to figure that out. And you were talking about Willow Creative. It's like she's got all this stuff about like she's got like the Mewtwo build and all these things of like how to like alter your legs and stuff. So she's got amazing reverse legs. You should definitely they're so cool. Yeah. I remember she posted a video of her testing out her stilts and she was jumping or something, and I was just like holding my breath because I was just waiting for that to buckle, but it's solid. They're solid builds. She's really good. It's incredible. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's great. That's cool. I have to say, my dream, the Mondashuans from Fifth Element. you know, the big golden guys.
Oh my god.
And then
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
I want to have the
Oh.
fist come out, and then the little key comes out of the finger, and then it comes
Nice.
out, and then it gets crushed in the door. Maybe a detachable hand. I
Yeah.
love the idea of like, it's ever since like years ago. I'm sure you guys have seen that Adam Savage tested his Totoro build.
Mhm.
He did like
Yeah.
a really big encapsulating Totoro build, and
Just a big umbrella.
yeah,
big
it's
umbrella.
so cool. So I want to do something big, and I'm like, oh, Amanda Schuin would be amazing, because I would love to see how they were actually built on set, and having
Yeah,
like
that was
maybe a
all
little camera
practical.
up top and stuff like that. Yeah, so it would be.
Fifth
I think
Element's
that'd
a
be really
good
fun.
Fifth Element's a
Like-
good showing
that.
of just practical
yeah.
effects and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like that
it
video
was ahead of
Adam
its time. I
did on
think.
the gun that Gary Oldman's character had in the film.
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
The ZV1 or something like that.
Yeah, that thing is incredible. Like,
someone
especially when
just
people
posted that.
find the same make and model parts and just do it. And it's like
The cult following for that gun is it's like bigger than the DeLorean. Like just this
Yeah,
one gun
100%.
from Fifth Element, people are like, yeah, this is it. This is the Holy Grail. Sorry, we don't make the rules.
I forget who it
Oh,
is, but
but-
this cosplayer I follow, he made one, and it actually has like the spikes come out, and the little thing opens up at the bottom for the ice gun and whatever, and it looks it's absolutely slipping my mind. So if someone watching this knows who does it or something, or I'll send it to you guys if I find it. But it's
That's cool.
it's amazing. I saw that, I'm like, oh, like it's really, really good.
I think the only thing that rivals that would be like the proton packs from Ghostbusters.
Mm.
That's about it.
I think everyone wants to. Yeah, I've always wanted to make a real cool like working proton pack.
One of my friends actually has like an almost built proton pack. I forget exactly. He bought it like a kit or something, and he wanted me to 3D print I think it's the wand or something like that. But he hasn't gone back to me about it. Yeah.
The Ghostbusters cosplayers are some of the nicest people I've ever met at any con ever.
They are.
They're always like, they're so excited, and they'll immediately start pointing out what's wrong with their own pack. Like, yeah, I had to cut corners here, and this isn't accurate. And if you looked at what Dan Aykroyd want, they'll just like rip their own stuff apart, and you're like, dude, this looks perfect. What are you talking about?
This is supposed to be 2 inches to the left, and this is only supposed to be half inch piping, and you're like, what? It looks amazing. This is like production quality.
Yeah, and it looks great. And you're like, yeah, they're all so nice people. Same with the droid builders, the R2 builders and stuff.
Oh my god.
Yes.
I have some very close friends in the 501st, and like one of my best friends, closest friends, is in there. He actually got me into cosplay and starting the Married Makers, and they're the best people to hang out with. They're so cool.
Yeah.
Like you said, the droids and everything, and even like the Doctor Who people at the Daleks. I've like a Dragon Con. If you've seen the Dalek people scooting around in the Daleks and stuff like that, they're so cool.
I got to cover.
Oh,
yeah.
No, I was gonna say, like, speaking of the droid builders, it's like I got a little chopper. He's back here, but I got a little chopper from Disney World whenever we went last year. And after I got it home and I was just playing with it, I had like a month stint where I was on the droid builders groups of like, I'm gonna build my own chopper, like my life-size chopper. And I'm like, okay, I need to slow down, but
they're expensive.
Maybe one day I'll have my own chopper.
I think R2 builds.
Cool too.
R2 builds average anywhere from 8 to 12 grand. I think the Wally builds are like 10 grand. The BB-8s are anywhere from like 4 to 6.
It's insane.
Yeah, they get pricey. But what was cool is I think it was at Silicon. I've ran into the same group of R2 builders like 4 times between WonderCon, Silicon, and you waddle up to them in like an Iron Man suit, and you start chatting just about different things and techniques, and you realize like, oh, we have a lot in common when it comes to building these things. Like just between the 3D printed parts, the painting, some of the electronics and stuff, and you're like, these are more approachable than you'd think, but like it's such some of the parts are just so dang expensive.
Yeah, that's exactly how it was. It was like, it seemed so approachable for me to just print a chopper, and then I was like, oh, this is expensive to actually get through. So no, thank you.
Do you guys ever fall for that fallacy of like, oh, I should buy this? I'm like, I can print it, and then you never do, or you get into printing it, and you spend more time and money on printing it yourself. And then you're just like, I should just bought this. Like, why did I do this?
I'm sure we've all gone to a con before, and you're walking around and you see something in a booth, and you're like, oh, I want this figure or this thing, but you stop and you check Amazon, and you're like, nope, $10 cheaper, or you're like, this is you stop yourself from buying. You're like, I'll buy it later. But when you can start 3D printing and building your own stuff, there's a third step to that. It's like,
Yeah.
I want this keyblade. Oh, it's cheaper online, or I can print it. So
Yeah. But then the time you spend, and time is money, and then
you might as well have
Yeah.
just bought it. You
pay
might
up
as well
prints.
just
You might,
bought
yeah,
it.
you should just buy it, support other artists,
Yeah.
But it is something that's been like in my mind, even stuff for like everyday stuff. Like my dad got a new truck a couple years ago, and he's like, oh yeah, this little thingy broke. It's about $40 to order it from like England. And I'm like, nah, Dad, I'll just I can model it and print it for you. It'll take me like an hour to model, and I still haven't done it. So
Yeah.
I was like,
Dad's
years
still waiting.
yeah. And he's like, so about that thing, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting to it.
It's what it is, right? You might as well. It's time versus money. It's like, yeah, that $40 wasn't too bad now, was it?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's why
Okay.
I buy lightsabers, because I don't want to build them. I just want the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, there's
That's
definitely
actually-
some things like for Aloy's costume, she has a bunch of like beads and stuff on the front of her, and there's a fellow Aloy cosplayer who makes them, and I was like, I'm just gonna throw money at you to make these because I don't want to screw with these. You could make them
Works.
for me.
Support other artists.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. And make this, like, the community is already growing exponentially, like we said before, with the accessibility of 3D printing. So why not support more, make it bigger, make it better? And because all it can do is improve it for everyone, right? That's why we all do this too, is because we love it. So that's the most important thing. So we're gonna wrap up soon, but is there anything else you guys want to point out, discuss, anything at all? Maybe any advice we can go around, say any advice you have for new printers, 3D printers, people getting into 3D printing, who are like intimidated or anything like that. Any advice you guys have?
You're gonna mess it up.
You're gonna mess
You're
up.
gonna mess up. You're gonna mess up so much. You're gonna have failed prints. Your printer's gonna act weird. You're gonna get frustrated. Your paint's gonna fail and orange peel and flake, and you're gonna drop a print once. You're gonna make so many mistakes, but you learn every single time. You'll make a couple more of the same ones each time too. But if you can push through and persevere through a lot of it, especially with printing and painting, and you can make some pretty cool stuff, and the community is so willing to help. It's awesome.
A lot of support. Yeah. And there's so many things out there. Like all you guys have your tutorials, your videos. There's so many other people out there. I agree. Yeah. Because if you don't mess up, you'll never grow from any
100%.
mistakes.
Right.
And then, because you're gonna waste resin, you're gonna waste filament, you're gonna, like you said, drop something in the 11th hour of a cosplay and it's gonna shatter. We've all been there.
Yeah.
And you gotta hodgepodge something together with like tears and blood, and yeah, that's great advice. Anybody else?
I would say my biggest piece of advice is, and this was something that intimidated me before getting into 3D printing, especially if you're cosplaying and you're making like big, armor and not super detailed or whatever. If your prints don't look like, if your prints are not like pristine looking, or they don't look like, I don't know, everyone's always talking about like, oh, I printed mine at like 0.2 millimeter layer height or whatever, what's the best or whatever. Yes, if you have a more detailed print and it's, better settings and all that stuff aligned, it's going to be easier to sand, but everyone's going to have to sand their print. And especially if it's like these big pieces of armor, you're going to be sanding these pieces down anyway, and it may take you like 10 minutes extra if your print is really like busted. I have videos on my channel where oh my god, some of my earlier videos of me doing like a Clone Trooper helmet and Captain Rex helmet where the prints failed and I had to do all this stuff and like Bondo into it. I body shopped the hell out of those prints, and had I let these like 3D printing groups where people are they're just like so, what's the word? They're so concerned about the print quality that they're getting from their prints instead of just, I don't know, getting better at the actual body shopping and the sanding and finishing phase, then I probably never would have started. I probably would have been like, there's no way I'm going to get these prints to look as well as these people in these groups have. And it's like you said, Frank, like you're never going to learn unless you just do it, and your first, I mean, heck, I still have prints that don't look great, and I've been doing this for, oh my God, 5 years now. Oh yeah, 2018. Yeah, that's 5 years ago. But it's, you're just gonna continue to learn, and
the quickest way to kill the quickest way to kill the passion or kill that is by comparing yourself to somebody else.
Yes.
You can look to it for inspiration. And the only difference between someone like me and somebody just getting into this hobby is 3 years of experience. That's it. It's practice. It's time.
Right.
You're not going to get your first print or suit to probably look like this. It takes time. So compare yourself to yourself, how you were the other day. Be better on your next project, but don't look at my perfectly polished Instagram picture and being like, I'll never get that. I said the same thing 3 years ago.
Or if it doesn't look
agreed.
perfectly polished off the bat, then you get discouraged. Don't get discouraged. Because I mean, it's unfortunately for like cosplayers and people that do 3D prints and stuff like that, we're not just makers, we're also social media, you know, players, you know, like we have to play the game, we have to be influencers. And
you put your best foot forward. You want to.
Don't be discouraged by what you see, because like all your stuff, like you said, your stuff looks amazing when you show all the final stuff and like, oh, I made this print, I just did this, and you know, you'll see that, and then you look at your print and it's the very first print and it doesn't look anything like that. You got layer shifts, elephant foot, blah blah blah, stringing, and you're like, well, this sucks, and you just throw it out and you never try again. Like people don't realize how much crap goes on behind the curtains and how much like struggle there is. Like you just gotta break your print, or you have like a layer shift, you just break it apart, glue it back together, fill it. And like what you said, Robin, you body shop it, but that's a valuable skill that you now built on and learned, and then you can advance that even further, which further advances other stuff, which is less intimidating and opens you up to more stuff.
Right.
So that's great advice. Anything from you, Chris? Or
dude, what Frank and Robin said, it's if you're not failing, you're not doing it right. And like Frank said, you know, you show your finished piece, but what people don't see is the stuff that ended up in the bin. And I love it. Like at the time, I'll obviously be annoyed with myself that something's failed, or I'm comparing myself to someone and being like, damn. But then when you look back on it when it's done, you're like, okay, that was worth it. I've learned X, Y, and Z. I know what to do now and what not to do now. And just surrounding yourself with a good crew of people, whether it be online or in real life. I learned a lot back in 2021, where I got to do 2 weeks work on Love and Thunder here in Sydney at a FX studio. So
cool.
I built the Dark Shadow Lord from the beginning of the film, the one that originally had the Necro sword that Bale gets. So it was just a black dead body. Like it was he looked like an oil slick, but they needed something physical for Bale to have on set, because they shot it here at Fox Studios, but they used the volume as well. The volume they got the volume here at Fox Studios, which is cool. So he was already 3D printed, and if he stood up, he'd be about 6'7". He's a big boy, and he was printed out west at this big industrial 3D printing place, and I had to go pick up some spare parts of him one day. I've never seen a 3D printer this big before. I'm talking like nearly a story high. This thing was huge and belting out all these pieces. And he was thick, chunky PLA. And I got there and I'm like, oh, all right, here we go. And obviously because a lot of him had scarification like Drax. So you got to marry that up. And Colin, one of the lead sculptors who I think did 3, and the guy just has so much experience. He taught me, okay, we got to cover up these print lines. What we're going to do is get tissue paper and PVA glue. And what that also will do will make it look like the skin has died and thinned. Like, you know, even with, you know, elderly people, the skin thins. And when the body is no longer functioning, the skin thins out. So we did that. It covered up a lot of print lines. We learned a lot. We were able to patch, seam, all of it. It was 2 weeks of doing that, 2 solid week, 10-hour days of doing that. And then I primed him and handed him off to the paint department. But you learn so much. And the Odd crew that was at Odd Studio, they're doing a lot more 3D printing now. They have in-house printers, filament and resin. And it's so cool to see them doing that now. And obviously traditional sculpture will always have its purpose. And that's what I love about, you know, Ben Affleck's Batman cowl is a mixture of traditional and digital sculpture back and forth, and then to make the collapsible core so he can turn his head. But, you know, a lot of that was 3D modeling, and obviously scanning actors now instead of putting them in plaster, you just scan them and mill them out of a block of foam. It's It's crazy. Like it's so cool to see how far we've come in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, that's something unfortunately we didn't have time to touch on was 3D scanning because I had some good stuff for you guys. Maybe we'll do another one and
I would love to.
Yeah, man.
yeah, 3D scan like honestly, we could just talk for hours and just like shoot the shit about 3D printing in general. We don't have to stream.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like there's just so much stuff we can do.
Yeah, honestly, this chat has made me feel so much better about so many things that I was like so self-conscious about with 3D printing. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, yeah, same. I love hearing your guys' stories. This has been great. And also like, my cat's there. Oh, I just noticed her. Yeah. Yeah, like you said, validating stuff. I'm like, oh, am I the only person that thinks this? Am I the only person? Like, I know my wife does, and I know a couple friends do, but like to know that like the broader, I guess the not public, but the group, the 3D printed community, it feels the same. It's not just like, which proves like for beginners, this shows beginners like you're not alone. You know, everyone feels this way. There's so many issues. So we have a question. I don't know how to do anything I want to learn for free. Where do I go? YouTube,
man.
Yeah,
YouTube, my friend. That's the best thing. Okay,
wait,
so I think we're gonna...
does anybody have a Skillshare plug? Hold on.
I do not.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So why don't we just go around? We'll start with you, Robin. We already went through this at the beginning, but for people watching now, what kind of socials are you on? Where can we find you? Is there anything you want to plug? Anything you're working on for us to follow right now?
You can find me on YouTube. I'm just Vault Fox over on YouTube. I have an Instagram. I don't keep up with Instagram as much as I probably should, but I'm working on an Aloy cosplay, which is actually not a lot of 3D printing as we've been talking about. But I've been doing a lot of build logs there. I am working on some videos for my Bo-Katan costume that I'm hopefully going to get those out, whenever Mando season 3 drops, because I need that SEO. But yeah, you can find me on YouTube and yeah.
Great. That's awesome. Chris?
You can find me on YouTube, Cosplay Chris, and on Instagram, Chris Stanley Official. I actually just changed my handle from Cosplay Chris to Chris Stanley Official just to kind of broaden my horizons and stuff like that, because I want to do some more in front of the camera stuff this year with acting, but also always still build. So yeah.
I have to say that Wolverine thing you just put out was freaking amazing, man. That was so cool. It was that was good fun. Like, whoa!
My knees are still shot from that, but it was worth it.
Yeah, I was geeking out. Yeah, that was really cool, man. That's great. Man. Frank.
I am Frank. YouTube, Frankly Built. Frankly Built across all socials, actually. Instagram, if you want to talk to me, it's the best messaging system, I think, currently. And yeah.
Any big,
we can teach you. All of us teach you how to do stuff.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm Aaron from the Married Makers. If you want to follow anything we're doing, we're Married Makers Instagram. We kind of threw some shorts into YouTube, but we're trying to get into that. But it's mostly just Instagram. Follow us if you'd like to look at some cool stuff. But I want to thank you guys for joining us. This has been honestly amazing. It's been so fun picking your brains, hearing your opinions, getting all these different insights to it, and seeing like I said before, I don't feel as alone now. It's great. Yeah, thanks again. Thanks for everyone at home who's watching. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions because there seem to be a lot of questions here, and we ran out of time for that. But tune in for another one, hopefully. And that's it. Thank you all for joining. Bye, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.